in this unit, and we already saw, like when we went through your dream cars, or your dream vehicles, we already saw some words that we're going to be using in this unit. So it's all about purchasing and maintaining a new vehicle. Okay. So purchasing comes down to two things. You can either buy it outright if you have the cash, or take a loan. That's called financing if you take a loan. Or, like I said, you can rent it for a certain period of time, and then at the end of that time, as long as the car is in good shape, the vehicle's in good shape, you can turn the keys in and say, thank you very much. You don't have to pay another. You can go off and find a new vehicle. Or you decide, you know what? I like this vehicle so much, I'm going to buy it out. Okay, but again, we'll talk about that later on. We're also going to talk about maintaining the vehicle, things that are involved in, upkeep and insurance and things like that, much like we did with purchasing a home. Okay, but to start off, so that sort of summarizes the first couple of paragraphs. So basically, before you buy, and then you guys would all be sort of looking at your first vehicle. I mean, these are some things that you want to just sort of think about. And it's kind of like, what do I need now? What do I need in the near future? So you guys might be thinking, what do I need for now and the next 4 years because I'm going to be in university? Okay. So maybe you want it for commuting to university, as well as to work. If you decide to stay in Manitoba and you go, you're going to the University of Manitoba, you're going to the University of Winnipeg, but you work somewhere else, you want to have a vehicle, because Winnipeg is not really a walking city. Winnipeg is a driving city, so you would probably want a vehicle for that. And then other ones are kind of obvious, like convenience. I mean, you go anywhere you want, and it's a feeling of independence. You don't have to rely on rides or rely on transit. Okay. And then this is if you've already got a vehicle, these last two bullets. So if you've already got a vehicle and all of a sudden the repair costs are getting a little expensive, you may want to think about getting another vehicle, used or new, leasing or finance. Or maybe your vehicle is just getting old, but you guys don't really need to worry about that at your stage. And then here's some more questions, and this kind of applies to the type of vehicle you're going to get, as well as it also suggests the kind of insurance you're going to get. So, for example, this first bullet, if you use a vehicle for going to work, or I believe going to school as well, you pay a certain insurance cost. If, say, you're retired and you don't work, you can get what's called a pleasure driving insurance, which is cheaper. Okay? If you're commuting to work daily, the insurance is going to be more expensive. These things are kind of like, the type of vehicle you're looking at. Will you be doing more city driving or highway driving? If you're driving a lot on the highway, you might want to think about more economical vehicles. Will you be the only one driving? Again, that speaks to insurance. Okay, something called third-party liability that we'll talk about later on. Towing anything, that sort of goes to the type of vehicle or what generally appeals to you. Features of the vehicle that appeal to you. So these are the kind of questions you want to ask. And once you ask those questions, much like we started with home financing, you want to see, okay, I decided I want a vehicle. I'm kind of looking at either a cheap new vehicle or maybe a better used vehicle if I can find one, right? It all depends. But you have to decide, okay, well, what can I afford? And it's very similar to what we did with house financing. Okay. So call it, yeah. When we did house financing, we called it the gross debt service ratio. With vehicles, we call it the total debt service ratio because it includes other debts, like if you have a vehicle loan. Whereas the gross debt service ratio for a house doesn't include that. So what it would be, and again, I don't believe you get this one on your formula sheet, but you can obviously put it on your reference sheet. It's your monthly housing costs. Plus all other monthly debts. Hence the word total. Divided by your gross monthly income. That's the income before taxes and other things are taken off. And then to convert that to a percentage, you just times it by 100. And we don't want it, remember, I don't know if you remember about the gross debt service ratio for a house, it was 32%. Vehicles, total debt service ratio, we're looking 40%. So let's look at an example where we're going to use this. So we're going to calculate the TD as an R. And remember, everything is monthly. So if in the question it says per year, you got to convert it to months by dividing it by 12. So newly married couple just moved into their new house. They are trying to decide if they can afford a new car. The car they wish to purchase will cost them $149 every 2 weeks. That's what bi-weekly means. They are currently living in a bungalow, a one-story house, with a monthly mortgage of $1,200. Heating costs are $89 per month. Property taxes are $1,300 per year. One of them also has a credit card debt she's paying off at $120 a month. And together they make a combined gross monthly income of $4,600. So you got to keep track of all this. Let's do the, well, let's start with the car cost. 149 every 2 weeks, therefore, how much is it going to be monthly? How do I figure that out? No, this is every 2 weeks. How much is it going to be monthly? Times by 2. So 149 times 2. That's for the car. Plus mortgage is $1,200. I'm just sort of writing them down as I read them in the question. Plus heating, which is 89. Plus property taxes. How do I figure out property taxes? Right, so I'm going to do 1,300 divided by 12. So these are the prop taxes. And then the credit card, 120. And then I got to divide all of those when I figure out that amount by the gross monthly income of 4,600. And then times that by 100 just to change it to rules. So let's do the calculations here. So 149 times 2 is going to give us 298 plus 1200 plus 89 plus 1300 divided 12 is 108.33 rounded properly plus 120 divided by 6400 times 100 and when you do that you're going to get about 39.5%. Yes. What do you, and but sometimes there's a gray area, right? Like this one. Like it's really close to 40. So I guess we could say technically they could afford it, but they sure couldn't take any more credit card debt. Okay? And I don't know if they're going to be able to afford anything else, like maybe a vacation or something like that. So it's kind of like, you can kind of argue both cases. Technically, they can afford it, but money could be tight. Or, you know what? Maybe we can pay this off pretty quickly. Like maybe this is paid off soon. Maybe we pay this off over the next 6 months and then go back to the card because then it'll be more reasonable. So like I said, you could argue both sides, yes, but money will be tight. Or no, pay off credit card debt first. Yeah, so that's a bit of an iffy one. Or what you could do, so this is if you've got a vehicle in mind, and then you want to figure out your percentage. Okay? What you could do is say, okay, what are my debts per month? Calculate all of this without this, and then see what's left over. So that's another way you can see if you can afford it. So a question like this. This guy wants to determine how much money he can spend. So he's currently living in an apartment, $850 a month. His rent does not include heating, which is $60 per month. He has no credit card debt. His monthly income is $2,500. What's the maximum amount of money that Cade can spend on a vehicle? So we would look at it like this. Remember, it's 40%, right? So we would want to find what's 40% of his monthly income. 0.4 times, which is, right, and when we do that, we're going to get 1,000. But then we got to take away his monthly debts. So then, $1,000 minus monthly debts, which in this case would be 1,000 minus, well, his rent, $850. We got to take that away. We got to take away the heating he pays per month. And that's it. Remember, these are sort of regular debts. These are not things like, you know, you're saving up for a vacation or you're buying toiletries or groceries. That sort of changes month to month. Well, if we do that, we're left with $90 a month. $90 a month, and yeah. And I mean, this is a great deal. If you can find a deal for $130 a month for a vehicle, it's got to be used. Okay. But even that, he can't afford it. Okay. He only has $90 per month to spend. Okay, so now we're going to sort of go through a little bit more tech here. We're going to go under the assumption that we're going to look for a new vehicle. Used vehicle, different, slightly different things going on, which we'll talk about later on. So shopping for a new vehicle, you're looking at going to a dealership. Okay. So how do you choose a dealership? Different ways. I mean, you may have read something somewhere about certain dealers that have good reputations. The big one is this, word of mouth. You know, like family or friends will say, oh yeah, I bought a vehicle from here and they were really good. Okay. You definitely don't want to go to one dealership and stop. You want to do at least another one because you never know. It might be a different price. Yes, there's a sort of standard price when the vehicles are shipped to the dealerships, but then the dealerships get to decide what the final price is. And they may provide you with some incentives. Okay. So you got a dealership, you got a vehicle. These are the kind of things you want to look at. Okay. Checking the sticker price. That's the manufacturer suggested retail price, or maybe it's a little less than that, maybe it's a little more than that, maybe they're giving you some other incentives. Okay, so you definitely want to sort of keep track of all that, and you want it in writing. Definitely, because you don't want to go back and say to pick up my vehicle, and all of a sudden it was like, oh well, you know, we had to charge you another $500 for this package that we told you we were going to give you for free before. Test drive for sure. Reading the owner's manual. No. I mean, you see the owner's manual, they're pretty thick. I mean, you may want to look at a few things. Okay, warranty, definitely. Okay, you definitely want to, because remember, we're talking about a new vehicle, so it will come with some kind of warranty. You want to look at the length of the warranty. You want to look at how much is covered. Okay. We'll talk a little more about warranties later on. And then, of course, before you actually sign, you got to make sure your financing is in order. You can either finance through the dealership, or you could go to your bank because maybe they're going to give you a better deal. Things that you can do to save a little bit of money when you buy a vehicle. Smaller the vehicle, obviously, the cheaper it is. Okay. Sometimes you can negotiate for price. You know, is that the best you can do, or can you do better? Or if you go to another dealership and they can do better, then maybe you go back to the original one and say, you know, well, this dealership's giving it to me for this. A lot of times it's hard to negotiate for price, but you can negotiate for options. You know, toss in some floor mats, toss in some mud guards, toss in a certain stereo package, toss in rust proofing or something like that, some kind of package. Okay. Here's a couple of things that you want to keep in mind. Okay. You want to avoid buying brand new vehicles the moment they get to the dealership. Because everybody's excited. The new 2025 is here, right? But if you wait a little bit, the price can often go down. Like, so the dealership's going to say, oh yeah, I mean, that's economics, right? If the demand is high, they're going to charge you more. If the demand is low, they're going to lower the price. Okay. And then a lot of times, even wait for a year. Just before, say, the 2026 comes out, say, okay, I'm going to go look at a 2025. I mean, you can still find new ones that are still on the lot, still have no kilometers on them. Before driving away, a couple of things. Obviously, you want to do, and a lot of dealers do this with you, they do a walk around. Okay, because you want to make sure that there's no scratches or dents or anything like that. And then this is kind of important. Every vehicle has a VIN or identification. Okay, that's every single vehicle has a different VIN. So you want to make sure that on your contract that you sign, the VIN is the same as the vehicle. So you don't want to drive away with the wrong vehicle. Okay, buying. We're going to go under the assumption that most people don't buy vehicles. So, you know, like, I mean, I don't know, an average vehicle, what, 30,000? Like, I mean, there's ones cheaper, there's ones obviously much more expensive, but for a decent vehicle, 30,000 maybe, okay, somewhere around there. That's hard to pay in cash. That's hard to have that money sticking around. Some people do. Okay, so most people are going to take a loan, which means they're going to have to finance part of their vehicle. But they can, so things you got to keep in mind when you're purchasing, if you've had different vehicles, you may already have one, and you may get a trade-in allowance. And this is something you may want to shop around a little bit for, because some dealerships will give you different offers for your current vehicle if you're looking at buying a new one. You know, like if you've got a, let's say you buy a 2025 something, and then 6 years from now you decide to buy a new vehicle, and maybe one dealership is saying, well, we'll give you 15,000 for the 2025, and maybe another dealership is saying, well, I can only give you 12. Okay, those will vary. Manufacturer's suggested retail price we talked about. Okay, that's the selling price the manufacturer recommends. It doesn't mean the dealership has to give that price, but they do state the MSRP. Okay, so it's the base price without any bells and whistles. And then often you'll see a sticker on vehicles. When you go, like if you go to a dealership, you see a sticker, it'll list the MSRP, and then it'll list options you can get with it. And then there's some other things that you're going to have to pay for every new vehicle. If you're getting air conditioning, you got to pay an air conditioning tax of $100. There will be a destination or freight charge. The cost of sending the vehicle from whatever factory it was built to the dealership that you're buying it from. Okay. And like I said, the MSRP will be the same in all dealerships. However, the action may change. It all depends on the dealership. Okay. We talked about that there's going to be some extra fees and taxes, freight or destination charge, air conditioning tax. There are also other ones. They will charge you for drawing up documents. There's a tire tax. You pay the provincial sales tax. You pay the goods and services tax. So, you know, you got to keep those things in mind, you know, because, I mean, it can add up depending on the vehicle, especially if you're buying a new vehicle. So how do we calculate it? Well, first of all, we take the MSRP, the documentation fee, and the tire tax, put those together. Take away the trade-in allowance if you traded in a vehicle. Once you've got that amount, multiply it by 1.12, so that that's charging you for PST and GST. Because PST is 7% in Manitoba, GST is 5%, together it's 12%. So Moira purchases a new mid-sized auto from a dealership. It has a manufacturer's suggested retail price of $22,998. She's getting a trading allowance of $5,000 for her old vehicle. We want to calculate the total purchase price. If in addition to PST and GST, she's got to pay a documentation fee of $149 and a tire tax of $14. And these are going to get taxed PST and GST. So, I mean, I know I said, like, what you can do is you can do step 1 and 2 all together. So we can say cost before PST and GST. And that cost is going to be the vehicle plus the documentation fee plus the tire tax minus the trade-in, because you're putting that towards the vehicle. So it's going to be a little less cheaper. Okay. So I'll just keep track of this. MSRP. This is the doc fee. This is the tire tax. And this is the trade. So when we do that, I believe we should get $18,161, $18,161. That's how much before tax. And then finally, after tax, GST and PST. That's when we times that amount by 1.12. So 18,161 times 1.12, rounded to the nearest cent, which means 2 decimal places. Gives us $20,340.32. And then, so maybe you pay cash for that, maybe you finance that. Because maybe you couldn't put a down payment on, the only sort of down payment you could put was a vehicle trade-in. Okay? And I'm actually just going to stop there right now. Because, yeah.